Hey guys, welcome to my channel. Today what we're going to go over is the assembly of the Ender 3 from Creality. Some of the things that we're going to do is we're going to discuss just in the initial portion the checking the wiring, checking for level to be sure that your frame is set up correctly, and then building it up. We're also going to go ahead and go over some of the upgrades that I'll be doing along the way, and those links will be in the description down below. I'll have links to Thingiverse and where you can get those parts. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started and walk through the assembly process. For the first part of the build, a couple of the pieces that I've went ahead and created, again these are from Thingiverse, is a wire protector. This wire protector is actually going to go underneath the bed, underneath the frame, because if we look at the frame, what we notice right down here is you'll see this cutaway area. Now this cutaway area right here is just raw aluminum that's been milled out and is extremely sharp. All edges around this are very sharp. Now if the wires begin to rub on those or anything else, you're going to end up getting a bare spot, you're going to ground out, you're going to short the system, and you're going to have problems. So that's one of the first things that we're addressing with this right here. So again, links will be down in the description. Another part that we're going to go ahead and put in are bed spring protectors, like these right here. Now, I also have a link down below for these. Very simple print. These take maybe a minute each to print. You'll have these, and so we're going to actually take the bed off. We're going to install these and then put the bed back on. These will space the bed out just a little bit further, but not by much. I mean, we're talking maybe it'll add 2 millimeters to the spring. So no issues there, we'll be fine. So let's go ahead and get that done. Once you've got that off, take it off carefully. Go ahead, set your springs off to the side so they don't roll away and disappear on you. There they are, all 4 springs there. Now another thing that we're going to look at while we're doing this is the wiring. Now sometimes the wiring is actually tucked in a little bit further than it needs to be inside this case, as well as this wire right here for your screen. When I got this one, it was actually down here and pinched in the bottom. So what we do is we go ahead and remove this cover. There's going to be 3 screws up here. We're going to remove this cover and we're going to double check the wiring inside and see what that looks like. Alright, with the cover off, welcome to the inside of your Ender 3. You'll see in here that we've got the Creality, get it on there, version 112 is the board that we've got. Screen's plugged in there. We're going to go ahead and double check and make sure that the wire over here is actually in that little groove, so it's up top. That's what we're looking for there. Here's another little added piece. It's right here. Now, eventually these will all be running off of Octoprint server. In the meantime, I do use the SD card. What you're seeing right here, if I can kind of get in there, this right here is an SD slot protector. The front of this machine, you can actually see the protector in there. If you don't have that in there and you're drinking one night or you're just not paying attention, you'll go to stick your card in, you'll actually go above the SD slot and just slide your card and it'll be sitting on top inside of your case, which at that point you're pushing the bed back, you're taking off the panel, you're fishing your SD card out of the machine. Whether they fix this in newer releases, I don't know, but currently this is a great little fix right here. Again, link will be down in the description for that piece. So we've added this. We've double checked all the wiring to make sure that there's no coils or bundles or anything else going on in here. Everything looks good and everything is attached well. So we're going to go ahead and put this cover back on, and then we're going to go ahead and put this piece in place underneath in there. That will be sure that those wires are protected, and we can move to the next step. So here we are at the bottom of the machine. We'll go ahead and take this. This will simply go over top of all your wiring, push it up into the hole, and it goes right into place like that. There's no need for clamping or anything else like that, extra hardware or anything. Once that's slid in there and that's in place and your printer is down, this is not going to go anywhere, and all the wiring and everything else is going to hold it in place. It's going to be good to go. So that's there, everything's good. Now, along the way, we're also going to go ahead and do some upgrades here too. One of the big things people always complain about is the noise that comes out of these cheaper printers like this. So we're going to go ahead and address that as well, and we're going to do that with dampeners. Now, the dampeners I got are from Good, and I will put the link down below. And this is what we're looking at for a dampener. Now, essentially what this does is this isolates the motor from the rest of the frame. You'll see it's got a little bit of rubber in between. You've got two screw holes here, and then you've got opposite two screw holes there. Two of them attached to the motor, two of them attached to the frame. The rubber keeps it isolated, so it should dramatically reduce the amount of noise that's created from the printer. Because of the fact that we're using the Creality version 112 board, we don't have the option to be able to change out printer drivers or anything else like that. The drivers are going to be what is on the board. Now, unless we were to go ahead and put in, say, an MKS Gen L board, then we'd have these swappable drivers. We could make it a silent printer, and we could do things like that. With this printer right here, we're only going to do the basic upgrades, things like this, things like a few printed parts here and there that are actually going to make it a much better printer out of the box. Without really actually having to spend much more than a few bucks here and there for just a couple extra parts. The minute that you move into an MKS Gen L board, along with the drivers and everything else, you're looking at maybe anywhere from a $40 to a $60 to $80 upgrade, depending upon what it is you're doing, as well as power supplies and everything else. I mean, there's a lot of things that people are doing to these that make them a much better printer as they grow with it and as they learn the machine. But quite honestly, it is a fantastic printer out of the box. I've got a few of these printers that have been up and running for a while now that I haven't done any upgrades at all to. A few of the other ones I've been doing upgrades to experiment and to see what we can do with the printer. So we're going to go ahead and move on. We're going to get this piece on here, and then we're going to move to getting the spring washers on. Once we've done that, we'll be able to move further along in the build. Okay, so to put the dampener on, the first thing we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and loosen this, because once we have the dampener on there, it is going to push this motor further that way. So this will need to move further this way. Now, on the dampener, you're going to see that one side is threaded and that one side is not threaded. The side that's not threaded is the side that's actually going to go up against the motor. Now we can run the same screws back into this and screw the dampener onto the motor. With that done, to go ahead and reconnect my motor cable. Again, we're going to use the same screws that we used before. And then when you retighten this, what you're going to want to do is make sure that it's lined up with the center of your 2040 channel. You're also going to want to make sure that it's on the flat spot on the motor. And there you are. Motor dampener installed. Now before we get too far doing anything else, one of the next things that you want to check is make sure that the frame, when it was assembled at the factory, is level. Most of these machines that I've noticed have a tilt to them, or a little teeter. So make sure you're on a flat surface, hit your corners, make sure that everything is level, that there is nothing that is teetering on any point, that something's not even. If it is uneven by any chance, what you want to do, take your big Allen wrench, you're going to go ahead and loosen these bolts here, you're going to loosen the bolts over here on the other side. Don't take them all the way out, just loosen them just enough to where things are loose. You're going to go ahead and press it down on the center. Once you're doing that, everything is going to be flush where it needs to be sitting. Press down on the center slightly, retighten these bolts on both sides, and then you'll notice that everything is square, level, flat. These should be flush. Everything will be nice and square. That's what we want to start off with as a base. If you're a little off kiltered or anything like that, it will throw everything off. Your towers will be a little bit misaligned, everything will be a little bit off, and you'll never get that really nice print that these are becoming known for. So we want to be sure that everything is square, which at this point it is. So the next step that we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and get all of our spring washers on and reinstall the bed. Now the reason that we want to use these, and there's a lot of videos out there that actually indicate it, but these springs have very sharp ends on them where they snipped and when they're manufactured. What they'll do over time, especially if things are moving, is they will actually etch in to the coating that's on here, as well as they will etch in to the bottom of the plate. Now if that starts to happen, what's going to happen is it's going to eat into these little traces that are down here and actually start to hit that 24 volts. If that happens, this will arc to this through the spring. It'll basically ground itself out. You'll have all kinds of issues. So I definitely suggest getting these done. It's a very, very simple, minor upgrade. You get those on there, and that is going to protect your bed and the plate from the spring digging into anything. So I'm going to go ahead and get that done now, and we'll get the plate on. Alright, so just a little cap here. There's all the beds, the spring washers. Of course, back here we only need the one up top, as the bottom is done by the strain relief. Wire guard, and right there. So base, we're looking good now. Alright, our next step is we're going to go ahead and get our uprights on. These are our uprights. Now we've got a left and a right side. Left side is going to get the one that has the two holes at the bottom like that. The one on the right side will have the two holes here and here. They're going to go to their lowest point and facing the inside of the printer. To attach those, we're going to use these bolts right here. Each one of them has a lock washer on it. These are going to go in from the bottom and screw these on. So let's go ahead and get these in. Now, here's another thing that I tend to do when I'm assembling my Ender 3 printers. I'll put the screws all the way in, but then loosen them up slightly so that this just has a little bit of play to it. Same down there. The reason that I'm doing that is I'm going to go ahead and take one of these extrusions here. I'm going to go ahead and hold that flat against there. Now, the reason that I'm doing that is essentially just to try and make sure that they're both straight with each other, that there's nothing that is off whatsoever. So, at this point, everything is completely square. These are flat. There's nothing moving anywhere. This is square all the way up to the top. There's no twist on these at all. So everything is where it needs to be. So we're off to a great start. Let's go ahead and move on to the next step, which is going to be installing our 24-volt power supply, as well as our screen. Now, another little add-on that we've done is we've done a back cover. I haven't removed the speaker. A lot of people I know like to remove this speaker because it annoys the hell out of them. I went ahead and left it on, and there is one print in there that actually does have the circle there, so that's fine. The nice thing about this is this just sits like this right here. And a lot of times people will come to grab it or anything like that. They get their hand back here. Well, you're dealing with an exposed board. And even if something's on your table, you move something, another piece of metal comes along and somehow gets back there, you're going to end up shorting something out. So this is just a nice little added level of protection. Again, link will be down in the description. But we've got that. Another little thing that I like to print is this little tool drawer. And you'll see it has a groove right here. Also has a little piece right back here. Now this is adjustable. You can actually set it up so that it prints without this. I did change the hole pattern a little bit since I was having some trouble with the really fine mesh, but I like this one because it actually allows some venting in there, because it does need to breathe out this side, and that will actually allow a little bit more venting, keep everything cool. But this is just a nice little place to keep all your tools or little screws or cards or whatever else. And where it goes is it slides right onto the bottom down here, into the bottom side of your 2040 here, and then it also slides into this one right here. That will go in there as a drawer. Now you're going to need to put this in first before you put the cover in, because once that's there, this will actually stop that from sliding all the way out, which I kind of like. Some people don't. I kind of do. So we're going to do that. So we've got this added in, and we've got this added in. One other little thing that I'm going to go ahead and add in here are these little cable clips. Now what these little cable clips are going to do is they're actually going to secure our monitor cable, this little ribbon cable, to this 2040 in the back. Or I'm sorry, this 4040 in the back. And all it does is just clips on like that. Like so. What that'll do is it'll keep that cable snugged up to the back. Then we get our drawer in there. it sits in nice and clean. Cable doesn't get in the way, it doesn't drop down, it doesn't tangle up or anything. It just is going to stay nice and clean back there. And then this right here is just going to plug into the back of the monitor and stay out of the way there. So we're adding that, the cable clips, and then we're going to go ahead and attach this now. Go ahead and take this cable, plug it into the back of your screen. Alright, power supply is on, screen is on, plugged in. Now, when also, just to cover this, when your motors are plugged in, like when it comes out of the box, don't move the bed really fast back and forth. If you have to move the bed, move it slow, or even better, unplug the cables from the motors. These motors will act as a generator if not supplied with power. So when you move the bed back and forth really quick, what's going to happen is that's going to backfeed power from the motor to the board. You're actually going to see your screen light up. You don't want to do that. That's actually bad for the board. Maybe not 100% bad for the screen, but it's bad for the board because you're backfeeding power the way it's not supposed to go. So best case, if you need to slide it all around and move it, just unplug the cable from the motor and you're going to be fine. One other thing that we want to do now that we've got the power supply back in there, so we're going to go ahead and grab the cable that goes to the board. It runs out underneath all the other cables. We're going to go ahead and plug that into the power supply. And that's just going to sit down there at the bottom, back behind everything, out of the way, and not hurting anybody. So we're good there. So the next piece we're going to put on is going to be the Z-in stop. Now for the Z-in stop, the manual will actually tell you to mount the bottom of this 32 millimeters from the bottom of your 40/40 extrusion here. I would say don't even pay attention to that. What we're going to do is we're going to actually just go ahead and put this on, but we're just going to run the screws just slightly, just so that it stays in place. And we're just going to go ahead and leave it, right around the bottom here. So at the bottom of this essentially is about flush with the bottom of that. And again, don't make these tight or anything like that. Just all we're doing is just barely snugging them so that it will stay in place as we continue the build. What we'll do is we're actually going to come back and we'll adjust this once we get the X-axis installed and everything put together here. Then we'll actually start to make the final adjustments. Alright, for this next little piece, what is installed initially is this right here. Now this piece right here, from what I've experienced and from what a lot of other people have experienced, the way this goes on is like this. Now, it's made out of plastic, obviously. When you tighten this down, it tends to pull it or make it a little cockeyed. It doesn't make the motor sit quite right, and therefore you end up with a Z-bind. And that's something that we don't want. The great thing about this machine is that they actually give you a great little coupler, much better than those little spring steel couplers, because those things always come out of whack. So much better little coupler here, but this right here I'm not real impressed with. So we're going to bypass this piece and we're going to use this right here. Now I know it does look like it completely encases the motor and it will cause heat issues. Remember, this is the Z-axis. This right here barely moves at all. It's going to run your whole layer before it just makes a minor adjustment to move it up just a hair and run your next layer. So we really don't have to worry about this thing running high speed, running constantly like your X and Y axis motor are. This one, totally different. However, it is still going to be sitting on this 4040 extrusion, so that will essentially act as a heat sink. The way this is going to get installed is without any screws in yet. We're just going to go ahead and push this down. You'll see it kind of stretches out and it snaps into place. So the motor will not drop out of there now. We've got 4 holes on top. We're going to go ahead and put our screws in and get that screwed in to place. Alright, so once all your screws are on, next thing we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and drop these ones in. Now, there is a version that, the original version of this actually has 4mm holes for these. I did go ahead and redo this part, essentially enlarging these holes so that you can now drop 5mm screws into these holes. And the only reason I did that, it's a great design to begin with, but the only reason I did that is I don't have any 4mm screws laying around. Everything that I do here is all 5mm and 3mm. I think for the most part, a lot of times I hear that, especially because most of the videos that I've watched and seen tend to come out of Australia, like Tech2C's videos. I know he's down in Australia. There's a few guys up in Canada, but it always seems that the rest of the world has an abundance of 4mm screws. Here in America, 5mm. I mean, quite honestly, I guess we're lucky that most of us, or a lot of us here in America, even understand the metric system. Since we've been kind of left behind on that one, I don't know the big draw to the imperial system because the metric system is so much more accurate. But that's neither here nor there. So, with those on, we're just going to go ahead and come to the back. And you're just going to slide that into place, right up there. With that slid into place, we're also going to go ahead and take our Z-rod, drop that into place. We're going to grab the right nut driver and go ahead and tighten this down. There we go. Now, I'm not going to worry about tightening these up yet. I'm just going to let this float for right now. The guided install will actually have you tighten these down and tighten this down, get everything kind of locked in place. The reason that we're not doing that and the reason that we're letting this float a little bit is that once we put on the crossbar and it's got the piece that feeds over this, we want to be sure that we can adjust this appropriately and make sure that everything is completely vertical. This with this. And that way, again, we avoid any type of binding whatsoever. So, let's move on to the next step. So next up, we're going to go ahead and start putting together our X-axis. For that, we're going to go ahead and grab the extruder. Now, another thing to make sure of is let's be sure that the extruder is in the correct orientation. You'll notice right here that the feed tube is this side, so it's in line with the wheels going out that direction. When I originally got another machine, this was actually turned so that the feed tube was actually coming straight out, and that caused issues because then it was a bind. So yeah, that had problems. This way, like this, seems to do just fine. So adjust it like that and you should be good. So we're going to go ahead and grab our 2020 extrusion with, it's got 6 holes across it. We're going to start with the side that has the holes closest together, and you'll see that one side is countersunk where the other side is not. The side that's countersunk is actually going to go against this guy. And that's essentially where the head of that screw sits in. But before we do that, one thing I want to cover really quick, and this will help as we go through the build. What you're going to do, let me explain real quick kind of what we're doing. These have a tendency to either be way too tight or too loose, depending. First thing that we need to do is, this is an eccentric nut in here. If you can kind of see that. Right there. So this right here is an eccentric nut. Now what that does is essentially will tighten or loosen this wheel. These ones on this side do not have that. They are just static. However, the hole that these screws go into is slightly larger than the screw. So there are things that we can do to make sure that this fits exactly right. Now what I'm going to do, since we already have the threaded rod over here, is I'm just going to go ahead and test fit it on this one. Now right off the bat I can see that this is already actually a pretty good fit. Moves up and down with no issues, drops with no issues, which means I'm not going to have any type of a binding issue. Now if I tried to put this on, let me adjust that so you can actually see what I'm doing. Now if I tried to put this on and say I got to right there where that top wheel was, and I had to really force this thing down to get it over here, that's a problem. You're going to end up with binding. The first thing to do is to kind of look at this eccentric nut. You're going to put your wrench on there and you're going to turn the eccentric nut so that it's at its furthest point out. And if you look in there, you can actually see the screw as you turn that nut going this way, or as you turn it further, it'll point this way. So it teeters back and forth like that. That's what the eccentric nut does. You're going to loosen that all the way up. Then you're going to go ahead and try and put it back on again. If it is still too tight, then what you want to do is loosen this nut and loosen this nut. Just a little bit, just enough so that they kind of move a little bit. Once you've done that, then you can go ahead and put this back on again and you won't feel that tension. With that done and these nuts still loose, you're going to go ahead and come back here and tighten this eccentric nut back up just to the point where you can still move up and down, and it doesn't feel, it's not binding, it's not grabbing, anything like that. And then you're going to come back and you're going to retighten these nuts on the back. With those retightened, again, double check your movement, and if need be, loosen up your eccentric nut just a little bit, and you want it to the point where they're firm, but yet you can get in here with your hand and just ever so slightly move the wheel and it kind of slips in place, but there's no wiggle movement whatsoever. It's in there tight. So we're going to do that with that one, and then we want to do the same thing with this one. Same way like that. We're going to put it on there and we're going to feel that. Now this one right here is loose, so you can see that. So these wheels just spin. So the adjustment for that, we're going to come in here to the eccentric nut. We're going to turn that a little bit. Now we can see we still got plenty of play. Moves up and down with no issues, but there's no play in it. It's nice and tight. The wheels will still move. You know, I can get up here and I can grab the wheel and I can turn each one of these with no issue, but there's no play in it and it moves freely. That's what you want. So you want to do this first before we actually assemble the X-axis. Once you've got that done, then we can go ahead and move on to assembling the crossbeam. Alright, so we're going to assume that all of that's been adjusted and that's been done. You've prepped these, so these are ready to go. Now, we're going to go ahead and attach the bar to these. So, simple enough, we're going to go ahead and take the screws with the lock washer. We're going to go ahead and insert them onto the inside like that. And then we're going to grab a 2.5 wrench. And we're just going to get these snug down. Now again, like everything else, there's always this little bit of play on that. So what we're going to do is, again, make sure they're just a little bit loose. We're going to go ahead and push down on them so that everything is even, they're both hitting. And then we're going to go ahead and retighten. What that's going to do is that's going to make sure that we're completely level right across here. Okay, so that's on. That's good. The next thing we want to do is bring this back over. This is going to be on like this. We're going to grab our carriage. It's going to go on like so. Then this piece, same way with that little piece back there, that little countersunk area, it's going to go on just like this. So again, we're going to go ahead and grab our screws with our lock washers. We're going to go through. And we're going to get this screwed into place. And over here, we're going to do the same thing that we did with the other side. Before we get them all the way tightened down, while they're still loose, we're going to press down on it that direction. So we're pulling the bar up, pushing the plate down, so that it's actually kind of resting on the screws. We're going to tighten those down now. With that done, see, we got a nice moving carriage. We're going to go down to the bottom side here. We're going to grab our belts. Now, the way that you're going to do the belt is the teeth go on the inside, like so. But when we hook it up to the carriage, we want to go from the underside and run it through like that. So, let me zoom in real quick so you can kind of see that from where I'm supposed to be. I don't know what I'm looking at. There we go. Right there. So you can see the little nut comes out the bottom, and then it's going to ride along the rail, come back underneath, go through the motor, and come back over to this one here. That's what we're looking for. You're going to slide this into the track and just roll the carriage right over top of it. It's going to slide right in there. So now we've got our belt on. Now, one thing I did in this process here forget to do, and I said that we were doing it, was I forgot to put the dampener over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these screws out real quick, these 4 screws. I'm going to pull that motor before we actually get around to tightening this belt. I'm going to install that dampener over here. Now, one of the things that is going to change about this one, on the back dampener, we were able to use all the same screws that it came with. This dampener up here is going to be a little different because we cannot use the same 4 screws. 2 of them we will be able to use. The other 2, we're actually going to just go ahead and grab a couple of M3 by 6mm screws that will go through that into the motor, holding the motor onto the dampener plate, and then these two screws up here, the original ones, will go through and hold the dampener onto the extrusion. So I'm going to go ahead and get that done real quick, and then we'll continue. Okay, that's out of the way, and you can see here, there is our dampener installed. Kind of see it in there. Now the next piece that we want to go ahead and put on is going to be our tensioner, which is this guy right here. So again, we just want to line up the T-nuts back there. Adjust that a little bit so we've got some room to play with. We're going to press out on that, give it some tension so that it will tension the belt. And we can go ahead with that, with the inside screw tightened up. Go ahead and get this adjusted so it's straight. That way the belt runs down the track like it's supposed to. Get that one tightened up. There we go. Belt's on, tensioned, dampeners on. Everything so far is exactly like it should be. We've essentially followed the directions with a few added pieces here and there. Again, if you don't have another printer at this point, this is your first printer. By the way, it is a great first printer. Install the normal pieces. Follow the guide. Install the normal pieces. Get those ones done. Print the parts that I've listed down in the description. And then go ahead and disassemble. Put the pieces on that you need, and then go from there. However, if it's printing great without these little pieces that I've added, stick with it. Don't change anything. That's one of the fallacies that I always see, is somebody will have a printer that prints phenomenally well, and it's their only printer, and then they go, well, I want to tweak it, I want to add some cool things, I want to make it look neater, I want to make things for the printer. Don't make anything for the printer if it prints great. Make things for people. Make things for yourself. Make some lithopenes. Don't make a Groot. Don't make a boat. I mean, enough people have done those. There's a million of them out there. Make something new. Make something different and interesting, and then go from there. So, never mind all that. Let's go ahead and continue the build. Now that we've got the X-axis completely assembled, one of the things that we can, now this is another little add-on item that I put on. This right here is Capricorn tube. Now it is fantastic stuff. I have not had any issues with this. It's a high temp tube. It's actually allows you to do things like your PETG and things like that because it has a much higher melt temperature than your standard PTFE tubing. So I would highly recommend investing in something like this, or just going with an all metal hot end. That's another thing. It doesn't like really cheap filaments very well. So if you have a filament that has a lot of varying sizing as it goes down the line, this is a much more exact tubing than the standard PTFE tubing that comes with the machine. That actually has a little bit more slop to it. With that though, with the tighter diameter, you're going to have less slop on the filament as it feeds through, and therefore you're going to get a nicer print. So there's a lot of things, there's give and takes. You'll learn these kind of things as you go along. We're going to take that, we're going to go ahead and plug it into the extruder. Make sure that's good and tight. What we're going to do is we're going to bring it up top, and we're going to feed that screw on. Like so. All of our wheels properly tensioned from when we initially got it all set up. Alright, with that done, our next step is going to be installing the top bar. Now this, quite honestly, just go on extremely easy, because at this point everything should be lined up. And the screws are just going to go right in with no issues whatsoever. Alright, top bar is on. Next piece is going to be the filament holder. Now, I typically want to try and get the filament holder as close to the edge as possible, so I actually put the T-nut right in between the two top nuts. Got that on. Next, we're going to take the PVC tube, simply slides through, screw that on, and oops, just that, there we go. Filament holder is now installed on the top. So we're almost there. We're almost to the end of the road. It's like I say, it's a fairly quick build. Shouldn't take a whole lot of time to get it all together and get everything operational and running. There's going to be just a couple other things that we're going to go over here on it. But the next thing that we need to do is we need to plug in all of our wiring. We're going to go ahead and turn it. The first one you can see is going to be this little short wire that sticks out of the control box down here. It's simply going to plug in to the install. Like so. That one's done there. Next step, we've got, and if you look, all these little yellow pieces right here, you'll see it has an E for extruder, X for X-axis, and then X for X install. So we're going to take E, plug that into our extruder, plug X into our motor, and the in stop into our in stop, like so. Okay, so we've got everything installed where it's supposed to be. One of the last little things that I like to do, and it kind of just depends upon where your wires run, sometimes your bed wire will tend to fall out this way. Another little piece that I like to add is this one right here. Essentially what this is this just keeps anything from snagging onto this back piece back here, whether it be these or this, whatever it might be. We just want to make sure nothing catches that rail. So I found this again on Thingiverse, and I'll post a link for this. But it's just a nice, simple little piece that attaches right back here. Now you will have to use an M5 tap, or 5mm tap out these two bottom holes down here, and that will allow you to screw this piece in, and it'll sit nice and flush right up top so that nothing is going to catch any of these edges. It'll just go nice and smooth right up and not catch anything. We'll put that on here. Okay, there we go there. Now, of course, last but not least, we want to make sure that we get these tightened down. So, again, the reason I was saying leave these loose is you can see how it kind of will move back and forth a little bit. It does sit right on the rail, but you're going to want to go ahead and make sure that this is completely vertical all the way up. And basically it's working off of this right here. Now sometimes it'll be flush against this, sometimes it'll be out a little bit. This particular case, it's actually out just a little bit. Probably 1.5 millimeters, maybe almost 2 millimeters out, to line up with how this bracket is up here up top. Alright, that's tightened down. This is on. All of our cables are plugged in, wire protectors in place, PTFE tubing is on, mount, dampener, everything looks like it's ready to go. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and plug it in. Power on. Now, one of the next things I'm going to do is, and this is one of the things that that I like to do, because this print surface is fine to start with. What I typically do though is I go down to the local hardware store, and they don't have 235 by 235 mirror tiles. So what I do is I get these 12-inch mirror tiles like these. Now, some people will say, well, why use a mirror instead of just a piece of glass? Well, with mirrors, you typically need a perfectly flat surface. Otherwise, you're going to get people who are going to buy a mirror, they're going to put it up, and they're going to look funny. Some people are going to look uglier than they are. Some people, you know, you get where I'm going with that. But anyways, they don't like mirrors that make them look ugly. So, mirrors are typically going to be perfectly 100% flat. I got a glass cutter, and then what we'll do is I'll cut a quick score, snap it, cut another quick score, snap it, and it'll fit perfectly on there. So I'll probably go ahead and do one of those so that we can go ahead and get a piece of glass on here, get a piece of mirror on here, then we'll go ahead and level up, and we'll run a print. Okay, so we've got our piece of glass, our mirror, as it is here. Fits real nicely. Now, these are the 3D printer's two best friends. Rave 4X Mega Hold with Clima Shield, or All-Weather Aquanet Extra Super Hold. Now, when you use hairspray on the mirror or on the glass, whatever you've got on the bed, don't spray it on the glass or the mirror while it is on the printer. You do that, you're going to get hairspray on everything, it's going to get gummed up, it's going to get sticky. Take it off, go over to the side somewhere, spray a nice layer on it, and then you come back to the bed. Set it on. And where I will go ahead and clamp it. Clamp it up front. I'll put one up front. I'll put two towards the back. Like so. And at this point, we're almost ready to print. The last things that we're going to need to do is we're going to need to adjust our Z height so that we are basically a paper thickness at the bottom, essentially like about 0.2 millimeter thickness, because we are going to be printing with PLA for the most part on this printer. Now, if you're using PETG or something like that, you are going to want a little bit more space between that. That can simply be set up in the slicer in your Z offset for your PETG profile. Essentially, when you go in and set up the profile, you'll just give it maybe like an extra I don't know, 0.2 millimeters, depending upon what your height is, because PETG does not like to get squished down. PLA, on the other hand, does. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and get it to start warming up. And that way the hairspray will dry out, but it'll be good. It'll make a good adhesion surface. So we're going to have that dry up a little bit just by heating the bed. Then we're going to come back and we're going to go ahead and adjust everything. Now, one of the other things I've went ahead and printed out is one of these fangs. This is for the hot end, and essentially the way that this one works, this is a little bit different from the Pets Fang version 2, is that this one is a single piece unit. The blower fan for your part schooler fan actually just plugs right in here up top. Your cooling fan for your hot end screws right on here. Wire will feed right up, so you literally should not have to change anything on the setup. You shouldn't have to cut any wires, you shouldn't have to change anything whatsoever to use this particular hot end setup. So we might go ahead and install this one, like I said, because I've got other printers that are set stock that work great, and I'm leaving those ones stock. This one, I wanted to do a few extra things just to show some of the add-ons that you can do while you're doing the build. You don't have to do them, but you can. And I've really wanted to try this one out and see how it works. I've heard some really good things about it. This was actually even printed at 0 infill, so it's completely hollow inside, nice and light. I did it with 0% infill and no support structures whatsoever. Just printed it, I believe, like that, flat bottom, and all the way up, no supports, 0% infill, 2 walls, 3 layers on the top, 2 on the bottom, and it came out really nice. So we may go ahead and put this on and continue the test. So maybe, maybe not, we'll see. You might see it in the next clip. Alright, so last but not least, the main thing that we're looking at over here is how we adjust this. Now that original 32 millimeters, obviously, especially because I've got the glass on it now, that will differ a little bit. That's going to be set higher. As you can see, our nozzle is right at the glass, and we set this accordingly, and then we can go ahead and use the knobs. We can do just a standard bed level. We'll go around, check all the corners, and once that's checked out, we'll go ahead and get the first print done.